an interesting weekend. Throughout the whole week, I had sort of been thinking about one of the verses from the epistle, reading the second reading that we had today, where 1 John 4, where the author is saying all these great things about Jesus, and then he says he's sharing these things. We are writing these things so that our joy may be complete. We are writing these things so that our joy may be complete. It's an interesting idea, right? That the good news that was happening in John's community was so good that it couldn't be really fulfilled unless he shared it with others. So I've been thinking a lot about spreading the good news, evangelism, outreach, whatever you might want to call it. How do we talk to others about how God is at work in our lives? At the same time, this past week, I went to go visit a bunch of my closest friends they all live in Boston, so I was in Boston this past weekend. And, a bunch of young adults, people roughly my age, and it's interesting. We all work at a church camp together, a little Lutheran summer camp. That's how I know everyone there. They're still all my best friends. I hadn't seen most of these people since my ordination day. Yet, despite us all kind of having worked in this Christian community together for many, many summers, probably almost none of them go to church outside of maybe Christmas and Easter. This is kind of an interesting thing, right? You spend 5, 6, 7 summers of your young adult life every day teaching people about Jesus at a summer camp, and then don't go to church. So I'm thinking about evangelism, about spreading the good news, and at the same time sort of just, hanging out with these friends. And for them, it was really kind of interesting. Like, the last time they had seen me was right before I was about to start this pastor thing. And so it was really interesting. They had, a lot of questions. I would say that, in general, the response, there was a lot of conversation, and they seemed to be of one or two characteristics. They were either of sort of interest in sort of this thing that was really foreign to their lives, or there was doubt about the value of religion. And sort of both these things kind of at once in most of the people I talked to. There was all sorts of different questions about church, like what do you do outside of a Sunday morning? As a pastor, and it was just interesting to talk about how a lot of the time I spend pushing emails around or just meeting with people to help them work through different issues or whatever it might be. Sort of, they just had no idea what church life really looked like anymore. They also asked me sort of what's the deal with worship? So. For someone that hasn't been to church in a long time, all the sort of arbitrary times that or not arbitrary, but it seems like it's arbitrary times, where we stand up and sit down, and I walk back forward, all over the sanctuary and say different prayers at different points. It was kind of confusing to them. They were like, what's the deal with this? But at the same time, once I sort of said, liturgy sort of is just the kind of historical culmination of how different Christians related and understood God over the course of 2 millennia, that was that's kind of interesting how different people relate to God. Okay, I can get that. We can have some conversation about that. One thing, though, a good friend of mine, one of my very best friends, he asked me, and it's a question that's been haunting me ever since he asked it to me a couple nights ago. We were just talking about this whole church thing and how things are going so well here at Messiah, and we're growing, and we got all these new folks, and new food banks happening, and the youth mission trip, and the new website, and all these amazing things. And he says to me, it's awesome, all those great things. Obviously there is good stuff happening because of religion in the lives of your people at your church. Absolutely. But he asks me, is it in the end worth it? And he was dead serious. Is religion in the end worth it? And he cites all these different examples of horrible things that at least have something to do with religion. I mean, extreme terrorist plots, or think about the Crusades. Or has anyone ever seen the show on Netflix, Borgia, by any chance? Anyone? It's not child appropriate at all. But it's really fascinating. It pretty much chronicles what life was like in the Vatican just a couple popes before, like, Martin Luther was around. So like the late 1400s. And, there's the Pope, like, all sorts of crazy, court intrigues and escapades and, ordering political prisoners to be sawed in half. And, all this craziness sort of, because of religion. And you just think about, keep moving forward in history. For instance, there was a lot of Lutheran pastors in the 40s that were Nazis. They thought that somehow, fascism and, the Holocaust were sort of in line with Jesus' teachings. Like, that's so bonkers. There's like pictures of, pastors decked out with like a swastika and, doing the salute thing. So is religion worth it? My answer, of course, would be absolutely yes. Of course. I see just I think I talked about it last Sunday, just some of the new friendships that have been made and the lives that have been changed only in my first kind of few months here, and all the joy that is felt here in our Christian community, and all the hopefully positive impacts we're making here in our community right here in Schenectady. There's countless ways that God is at work in all our lives, and I think most of us here know that. But I also think it's really important to keep in mind the context that we're living in. And not sort of just to throw away these doubts, to sort of, cast them aside as just, oh, that's just what young people think, or that's what whoever thinks, and they're just, atheists or something, and, whatever. But rather, I think as we too are called to share the good news, to share these things so that our joy may be more complete here in our faith-filled community, to keep in mind that there's a lot of people out there who have this faithful side that are intensely interested in what church is all about and what the Christian community is all about. But at the same time have these incredibly powerful doubts about whether, because there are a lot of bad things that have happened in religion's name, in Jesus' name. Then they have these incredibly powerful doubts. On the other hand, maybe they just want to go to brunch or sleep late on Sunday morning too. But these are legitimate things. And so the question I think becomes, how do we work in this sort of world? How do we share the good news? What is the way to do that? It's a question that I'm really passionate about. And I know we have a lot of new folks here. So one thing that I occasionally have us do is just have a couple brief minutes of conversation during worship, sort of just to discuss a certain question. So I'm going to have us do that today. So just turn to your neighbor or just anyone around you, and just spend 1 or 2 minutes talking about how maybe you've had some success in telling or sharing the good news of Jesus and telling people about church in this day and age, where there is this certainly deep amount of interest, but also this deep amount of doubt. So just let's have a little bit of brief conversation time about how one could share the good news, and we'll wrap it up in a few minutes. So please turn to one of your neighbors.